Okay, so today we're going to add a little sway mechanic to the scanner item here. So this will work with any item you have in Bevy. But yeah, I'm holding this scanner and it just doesn't look right. You want it to kind of move up and down when your guy's walking. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? So I'll just show you the way I have this kind of implemented first. In my controller, inside of the spawn for the actual player, underneath the camera. So this is the camera right here. So I've included some checks here to make sure that the asset pack has actually loaded the scanner. So I'm using an asset pack from who was the guy that made it? Asset Loader State. Yeah, I think you should. I'll put a link in the description to this, but basically it just creates loading GLTFs a lot easier and handles all the loading for it, and including other things like sounds. And then you just create your own enum to make sure it's all done. But that could be a topic for another video. So this is just making sure that the actual file for the scanner is loaded, and I have a player hand here as well. So I spawned the camera 3D bundle, and then I attach a child to it so that the scanner can follow the transformations of the camera as you move around, as well as one for the hand. And I've attached a component to the actual scanner tool, which I have defined here in another file. So given that, let's go ahead and create some of the logic to move this up and down. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to make an implementation as a plugin so that we can plug this into the character controller file that I have, just to make it kind of streamlined and clean. So we're going to put in some of the boilerplate here. I already have a snippet and neovim for that. And then I'm going to put in a system. It's going to be on the update schedule. And then we'll just call it scanner sway. Okay, that's all you need for the implementation. So I'm going to call it scanner sway. And we need a couple of items here. So first, we need to actually get the actual scanner entity that's going to be its parent, or the camera that has a child of this. So we create a query, and I want to make a mutable transformation for this because I want to change its translation in 3D space. And I'm just going to add a width here so that it's linked to that particular item. All right, so I just put mute transform, that could be anything inside the ECS world. So I don't want it to be too ambiguous. I am going to add a time component here, and this is just for the logic component because we're going to be using the sine function to go ahead and implement a sway up and down. And so Bevy has a time resource that we can use for that, and I'll show you how that's implemented. And so let's actually get the query for the player, because I want to make sure that this thing only moves when my player is moving as well. So I'm going to get the player as well, and I'm using a what is it? I'm also using a plugin for an FPS controller, and I'll also link that in the description. It's very good. I tried building my own. It was okay. I think this guy's is much more fluid, but maybe one day I'll make my own. Anyway, so we have all our queries set up. I'm going to save this so that it stops yelling at me. And I need to import, yes, Rapier. I'm just going to do prelude. Actually, no, we can just do velocities. That's all I need from it right there. Okay, great. So all the imports are checking out here. So let's define something like a step here so that we can tell the loop how quickly to oscillate in and out based on the time. And so let's grab the actual velocity of the player first. And so if And because of Rapier, we have a linear velocity component here that we can query. And it's a vector 3. So basically all I'm going to say is that if it's not 0, so essentially if the player is moving in any direction, x, y, or z, you can filter it if you wanted to just do x and z, but I'm not going to do that for the time being. Pardon me, my dog wants my attention now. Okay, so now we're going to grab the scanner transform. From the scanner query. Oh, did I call that scanner sway? Sorry, I must have been reading the wrong thing. There we go. Okay, scanner query, and it's going to be immutable iterator. Okay, and let's call a variable time since start equals, so the time from our resource, and then there's a rep method called elapsed seconds. It'll return a float, which is going to be good. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to define a delta as a float 32 times since start times step. So I'm multiplying the elapsed seconds by the step number, and then we're going to take the sign of that. All right. So, grabbing the player's linear velocity, making sure it's not 0. Then grabbing the scanner's transformation, and then every time the scanner's transformation, or every time the player's linear velocity is not 0, we're grabbing the time that's been elapsed, and then we're going to multiply that time by the step, which gives us a way to control how quickly it moves up and down. And by the way, the number 6 here is not arbitrary. Before I made this video, I kind of stepped through a bunch of different configurations to get it right. And yeah, I need to kind of refactor this, but this is a quick way to do it. So now we're going to set the scanner's actual transform. So we're inside of the transform, there's a translation field, and I want to affect the y coordinate. So we're going to take delta, and I had to do this for some reason. I'm going to figure out why. I think it's because it's in radians. So we're going to add the delta times 1500. Okay, great. And yes, unnecessary parentheses. Okay. So if I were to go ahead and run this, it won't really do anything, right? So it doesn't do anything. Why is that? And that's because we created it as a plugin, but we did not implement the plugin. So let's go to the controller, and let's go and add this as a plugin. So .add plugins, and I called it scanner tool, I think. And then I already get a nice auto import here. All right, so let's go ahead and try it out now. So there we go. As we're moving along here, we're getting a little up and down motion as well. And then if you adjust the step, I can make this, I don't know, 12. Yeah, recompile. The higher the step value is, the more quickly it's going to oscillate. So right now we're doubling the oscillation. So it should be, I mean, it was rather quick already, but there you guys. All right, and if you want, you can tie this to the actual linear velocity in any direction. But I think this is okay for me. So rather straightforward. If you guys have any questions about how I set up the actual scanner models and loaded them in, just let me know in the comments and I can make a video on that. So thank you. Hope this helped.